Hey everyone, it's Bear. It's Monday, May 31st, 2021. It's Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. Hopefully, people got to enjoy a day off of work, and also, hopefully, people took a little bit of time today to reflect and pay some respects for those who have fallen in the service of our country. That's what this day is for. So, thank you to all who have gone before and served the country, and for those who never came back, thank you, and thank you to their families. So, I wanted to continue my series of videos talking about enlisting into the US military as a trans person. One reason is that I never really documented it uh, professionally as I went through it. I talked about the process on this channel, but I never actually sat down and talked about exactly what the policies are and what kind of documents you need and stuff like that. Now the policy has changed again, and there's a slew of trans people that are now trying to enlist, and it's definitely um, it's definitely a process for everyone, but for trans people even more so because you're gonna have to have your transition completely documented. So I wanted to take some time and really go through the documents that you need and so forth. Those documents are available if you get in contact with Sparta. That's the group of trans people actively serving, whether I say active, but some of them are guard and stuff like that. But that's the group that you really can get some good guidance from. So hit them up in some way. They have a website. I'll link it in the description. And then they're also on Facebook. Those documents that you're going to need and the templates for letters and everything like that, they're all available through Sparta. So they make it a lot easier than just trying to do the process on your own. So included in that documentation is the current DoD memo for enlisting as a trans person. I went ahead and I dug out all of my stuff just kind of for funsies. And this current memo, this is the old one that I used. This one's 8 pages long. This one's 4 pages long. It's a lot more concise, and it took out a lot of the confusing language. Like, there was some really confusing stuff in there, and this one is just like streamlined, way more concise. And it basically, it took like 4 pages of you'll need this statement from a doctor saying this, and then another paragraph that almost said the same thing. It just went ahead and it streamlined it into 8 bullet points that are on page 4. Side note, up until now, these videos have been very low tech, and it's just me talking. I'm going to go ahead and work a little bit harder on this video so you can actually see the documents that I'm talking about. So I'll show all of that. We'll edit that in post, I guess. So yeah, for fun, I went ahead and I got out the folder of documentation that I've talked about in previous videos. I mean, this thing is packed full. This right here is my enlistment process, all documented. It's everything that I needed just to go into Meps. And yes, I carried a folder just like this, probably actually this folder, on the day that I went to Meps. It's got all my history as far as my transition, all the letters that I needed, and stuff like that. But we'll get to that in a minute. And then similarly, this is my current Air Force career. This is all my documentation since getting in, as far as like certificates and everything. That's got my orders in it. It's got my like application and my lease to get this housing. It's got everything. So if there's one thing I would suggest has been helpful to me, has been just being obsessively organized. This way, if there's anything I ever need to fall back on and be like, oh, do you have a document for that? Yes, I do, and it's in one of those 2 folders. So, but I figured I'd show that because I've talked about the enormous amount of paperwork that I needed. It may not be the same for you. If you're, again, younger, you may not have the same medical history that I had. or you might have more, and that's fine. It just might take a little bit longer. So let's talk about what's on page 4 of this memo. I'm going to read it to you, but I'm also going to share a screenshot, and then I'm going to talk about what some of that stuff means. So the documentation that you're going to need to clear for Meps. 1. Operative reports and discharge summaries if there is a history of sex reassignment or genital reconstruction surgery. 2. A licensed medical provider statement on functional limitations or complications. 3. A licensed medical provider statement on the need for any additional surgery. 4. A licensed medical provider statement on the progress completion of gender transition treatment. 5. A licensed medical provider statement on the length of time that the applicant has been stable in their self-identified gender. 6. A licensed medical provider statement on the length of time that the applicant has been stable on cross-sex hormone therapy post-gender transition. 7. A licensed mental health provider statement that the applicant has been stable without clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning and the length of stability. 8. For all other pre-existing medical conditions, submit supporting medical documentation in accordance with U.S. MEPSCOM Supporting Medical Documentation Review Program, SOP, Standard Operating Procedures. So that really, like I said, that sums up 4 pages of the previous memorandum, and it does so very, very concisely. So, yeah, let's talk about the licensed medical provider statements and history that you're going to need. That's what people are really asking about. I will show some of these documents as I'm talking about them, but basically you're going to need a statement and you're going to need your records. So I'll show those and I'll talk about them. For the records, it's going to be just a printout of the notes that your provider takes when they talk to you and when they prescribe you anything. So mine talk about going on testosterone for HRT. They talk about acne medication that I went on briefly, estrogen suppressing medication I went on briefly, and then state that basically just to continue the HRT regimen. And then it goes into my pharmacy records. That's another thing that you're going to need is your pharmacy records. This was super easy for me to get. There's a lot of like stress and anxiety going around with people like asking about this stuff. It was really easy for me. I just contacted my provider. I didn't contact like Walgreens. I just contacted my provider and I had him print out his records of what he was prescribing me. And they accepted that. I don't know what they're doing now, and I'm sorry to say that. That's not the most helpful thing. But they're asking for pharmacy records. I don't know which one they're going to want. If they're going to want you to go to every pharmacy you've gone to, if you've been in HRT for like more than a year or two, that gets kind of complicated. But this worked for me, and I would recommend starting there, is just asking your provider, hey, can I get a record of my prescriptions and my records? So then I needed a statement from him. And Meps initially rejected my statement because it wasn't worded exactly like the memo said. Now this memo is a lot more simple, so it's probably going to be easier for your provider to give you that. But I'll show you what I did. I just printed out the page of the memo that I needed. At that time it was page 5. I highlighted it or I underlined it, and I just wrote notes in like the sidebar saying, this is what I need right here. And I faxed it to his office. In some cases, I remember walking in to certain places. It was a little bit easier than faxing, whatever works for you, you know. But I just wrote like a note saying, this is exactly what I need. See this page of the document and this highlighted area. And then like I said, I just hand wrote some notes right on there. And then he was able to turn around and redo his statement. In that case, it needed a signature, so most of the statements that I have that I turned into Meps, I did pick up by hand, but I think you could probably get them faxed to you, and at this point, you probably just get them emailed to you with a digital signature, and that'd be fine. So I'll show you all those things, or I guess I probably, when I edit the video, I've already shown you those things, just so you can get an idea of what that's going to be like for you. And I did that for my HRT, right, my hormone replacement therapy, and those notes. I also did that with my surgical notes, and I got a statement from a mental health provider. So again, the surgical notes are going to be their intake on why you needed it, and then the actual notes from their operation saying we started at this time, gave anesthesia, completed it at this time, your follow-up appointments, and then a statement from them, again, saying that you are cleared for all activity, and then it's been X amount of months since the surgery. I'm not going to flood you with like documentation and stuff like that, but I have those notes as well. You know, again, it's a very similar thing. This is my documentation from my transition. It's like 6 pages. My surgery was probably about the same thing. It's about 5 or 6 pages, and then a statement from that provider. And again, I did the same exact thing. I wrote him a note, printed out the page of the memorandum, and highlighted or underlined or whatever. It needs to say this, and it needs to say exactly these words right here. And then it was too easy. I went and I picked up, you know, the letter from my surgeon. His office was incredibly slow. That was a little bit of a frustrating process. His office always required 30 days for anything, and typically the surgeon did it within a day or two, but then they would, I don't know, they're just not great. Anyway, get away from that. As far as the mental health stuff, that's something that anybody that's trying to enlist is going to have to turn in. You're going to have to turn in, you're going to have to disclose that you've seen a therapist, and they're going to want to see your records. In my case, I didn't actually have any therapy. I went through my transition, and I didn't go see somebody regularly. I didn't need it because I was living in Chicago at the time, and Chicago clinics use what's called informed consent. You don't need a therapist to sign off on you going on HRT, but you do need somebody typically to sign off and say that you're stable in order to have surgery. So when I had my top surgery in 2015, I went and I got evaluated by a gender specialist, and that's just something that the surgeon required. That's something that's just to kind of cover their butts. They don't want somebody to turn around and say, you know what, I didn't actually want this, I wasn't stable, and you operated on me. People have been sued, so it's just a standard thing that they ask for. So at that time, I went and I found a gender specialist in Chicago. There's tons of them. Chicago's a really liberal city, so they have that. And I sat down with them, honestly, probably about an hour, talked about my transition, why I wanted surgery, and so forth. And they wrote me that letter, and my surgeon accepted it. So what I did for the military, because they actually rejected my paperwork saying that I hadn't had any psychological treatment, they kicked that back and they said, well, we need any mental health history notes. And my recruiter and I kind of sat down and we were like, well, you haven't had any, so what do we do about this? And I just went back to that same person and I had another evaluation, and they wrote me a statement saying that they had evaluated me for surgery. These were their findings: that I was stable in my gender, that I was a stable person, I didn't have any depression, anxiety, so forth, and then that they had evaluated me again for entrance into the military, and that they found the same things, and in fact that, if anything, I had improved as I had continued to live as male. I was living very functionally and was a happy person, and that I was stable for entrance into military service. Again, I'm not gonna like share every single piece of documentation with you, but that's what I got, and it's in that folder. So yeah, it's a lot, but that's some of the stuff that I did. And then yeah, all other pre-existing medical conditions, submit supporting medical documentation. That's something I've talked about in other videos. If you were hospitalized for something, if you had surgery for whatever, you're going to need that documentation, and it behooves you to disclose those things, just in case there's any chance of someone finding out down the line, or you having a complication from that procedure and then they find out you didn't document it. It just looks bad for you. And I know a guy that his process was delayed almost a year because his surgery, he had like a surgery when he was a baby, and he had to go back like 18 years and try to find medical records for that surgery, and it was really difficult for him. And I think, oh yeah, he was a military brat, so he had to literally track down medical records from when he had lived in some other state way back when he was a baby. But he did it. It took him a while, but he did it, and you can too. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety on a lot of people's parts, saying I need to track down this information, and what do I need? So there's what you need. There's exactly what you need. Any kind of medical history, including like uh, gynecologist stuff. That was another thing that slowed me down. I had an IUD inserted, and I needed to go get those records, and those records showed that I had an ultrasound. They wanted those records. Um, the ultrasound showed ovarian cysts. They wanted those records. So that's part of the reason that I kept getting denied, is that I had to go get all that stuff again and again and again. There's people right now who are getting cleared. It's May 31st. This policy changed May 1st, and there's already people that are getting cleared to go to Meps because they don't have all that history. So it's possible that your process is going to be a lot easier than mine, and I'm really happy for you, because my process was long and it was tiring, and it was not always positive. There were a lot of times I was like, man, maybe I should just let this go. Maybe I should just give up on this. Um, but I got through it, and so can you. So good luck. Let me know what other questions you have, and I'll be doing more videos hopefully over the next week or two. Thanks.